Hey, yo, I wanted to talk about numbers, essentialism, health, mana, and all that funny hee hee ha ha stuff when it comes to designing our systems and games. There are two different ways that we normally track these things, right? So we have a point-based system where you have a certain amount of hearts, mana orbs, masks in the case of like Hollow Knight or something, and then we have numbers. We have our ints, which means our 100, our 5,000, and 27. And then we have our floats. We're going to talk about the dangers of these later. Well, the danger of floats in particular, a little bit later. So a float is like 50.03, 20.1, I'm sorry, 20.10. First, let's get deeper into each, and then we'll talk about like the weirdness of why we're doing this most of the time and why we're not doing this most of the time, and like how debuffs work, debuffs, or like regen. Okay, so the health system, mana system, SP systems that you're probably most familiar with are going to be numbers. I'm going to be having the context of RPGs in this case. So, like, you have 100 HP. What does 100 HP? When you take damage from some enemy, it'll go down to 80. That was a weird zero. 80. When you heal that 100, it'll go to 150. If you're taking damage over time in the force of bleed damage, maybe, or poison, whatever you have in your mind. Now that 100 will go down to 90, 80, and it'll be based on a certain timer that you set. However, if you use a bandage, well, now maybe the timer is slowed, or maybe it just stops the poison altogether. Numbers are a very, very, very flexible system. And the float system, the way you would use floats in this case, are to modify things like this timer to have fine control over just how fast or how slow these things happen to you. Even HP can be controlled on a curve. Like even like normal HP damage can be controlled on a curve. In Earthbound, in other Mother games, I think, definitely Mother 3, I'm not sure about Mother 1, your health is a roulette wheel. And when you take damage, this roulette wheel actually does start to spin down. And so like every part of damage that you take is damage over time. Everything is damage over time. And when you're scrolling through your menus and looking for a potion to use to save your ass, that is healing over time. It's never instant. This allows for you to take fatal damage and still continue to fight and continue to work and hopefully save yourself by moving fast enough through the menus. Final Fantasy's active time battle has elements of this. However, active time battle does not have a roulette wheel. The what happens is very instant. Um, the bar filling up is not though. This bar, by the way, is what determines the turn order. So when this bar fills up to its maximum, like right here, then you get your turn. Then you can take an action. But the enemies, their bars are also going up. So you have to be careful. You have to be able to choose fast and strategize fast. It's a very interesting system. Anyway, the point is that when you're doing things with damage over time and like timers and anything with time, you're likely going to want to use a float because you're going to want that type of granular control on some type of curve. Or maybe like another example. Let's say you take a pill, right? You take a pill that heals you very, very slowly at first because like your wounds are still open. And then as soon as your wound closes, it'll start to increase in how powerful it is. This is something you can really only do with floats. Now, here's the danger. I am not a CPU architect, okay? But I'll tell you, floats are fucked. That's not how you spell fucks. I'm going to leave it. Floats are fucks, all right? These are nasty fucks. You gotta be careful. When you think about an infinite generation game, a game with infinite generation, that just goes on forever. It's never actually truly forever, right? I hope I don't get banned for doing that. It's never truly forever. Um, Eventually you start to reach a barrier. In Minecraft, this is the Farlands, a bunch of weird generated structures that look very strange, and like you can go past them, you can go in between them. But what happens is what happens in most games is that time starts to distort. So like your screen and all the elements, all the meshes on the screen will start to shake. Shadows will just become like inconsistent. The timer itself will stop working correctly. It'll just freeze. Sometimes it'll lock up. It depends on just how far you are. But what's happening is that when we're building these type of infinite generation systems, we're working with floats. And a lot of the time we're not clamping them correctly. The CPU, it tends to let the float slip out. So let's say I have like 1,000 blocks. Well, usually it's 1,000.03 or some weird shit like this. 3333. Whenever we start going backwards like this, there's always a chance that our CPU will just slip. I think it has to do with the timings. I'm not entirely sure, but the further along you go in the decimal places in a float, the higher the chance of this slipping. And when this slips, everything fucking breaks. Once again, not a CPU. I'm not a CPU architecture guy. I'm just telling you the dangers. Floats are fucks. They're nasty, nasty fucks. You want to avoid them where you can. And if you can't avoid them, then you need to clamp them. I do not see a reason why you should not be clamping your float at 3 decimal places. 1, 2, 3. If you need more than 3 decimal places, consider your architecture again. Consider how you're designing your game again, especially for things like health, mana, experience points, damage over time, curves, for the basic things that even AAA games need. Be very careful with this. Now, I wanted to talk about this system, the heart system, the wound system. This is the other side of the coin and how we design. And this originated from Battleship, I believe. So the idea in Battleship, a really old board game, was that you had the ship, and the enemy also had a ship. They're battleships. Believe it or not, they are battleships. And the idea is that they fire a cannon. Boom. And they talk about a coordinate on a grid. And they say, I'm firing my cannon at A1. And then you look at your battleships on your side of the fucking board. By the way, there's like a screen here, so they can't see your side. And you tell them if they hit. So usually battleship will take up like 3 spots. This one, this one, this one. A1, miss. Damn it, now it's your turn. Now you get to fire your fucking cannon. And you say, B3, that's a hit. So what happens is B3, the part of the boat that's on B3, is damaged. And they represent that by putting a pin on it. And after 3 pins, you sink a battleship. Now there's this really important battleship that's only like 2 tiles long. And if you can sink that, you instantly win the game. And so it's a guessing game. You're dealing with like 7 battleships total on a 10x10 grid or 20x20. It depends. And this was a cool idea. But not Gary Gygax. There was some other guy who was working for D&D, and he wanted to play make believe with his friends without being called a nerd. And so he said, okay, let's adapt this. What can I do to make fights actually cool in Dungeons and Dragons? Because this system doesn't really fucking work. In Dungeons and Dragons, what was happening originally is that you'd be fighting like a bear or something. This is my bear. There's a big guy, and he'd be taking a swipe at you. That's his tail. He'd be taking a swipe at you. And you would just instantly fucking die because it's a fucking bear, bro. It's a mega bear. It's an owl bear. Wherever the fuck. When you get hit by this, you're dead. And so we need a system to represent how you're not instantly fucking dead whenever this bear attacks you. In comes hit points. Hit points originally were more than just like HP. It represents that now, but it wasn't always that. Hit points represented your stamina. It represented your ability to dodge, your intuition, a lot of things. It was a currency they could use. It was more like action points. And when you ran out of action points or hit points, you died. A good illustration of what this means, like in modern day, is probably Uncharted. If you've seen Uncharted gameplay, you know that Nathan Drake does not have. That's a weird arm. Nathan Drake does not have normal. He doesn't have a health bar. Instead, he has a screen, and the screen gets red whenever you get shot. What that's supposed to represent is Drake's luck. And so each one of these times the screen flashes red, the bullet's not actually hitting him. That's not happening. What's happening is the bullet is missing, and it was a near miss. It was really fucking close. He got lucky that he didn't fucking die when that bullet shot at him. All right? That's how they justify it in lore. And the idea is when you run out of luck, I don't know how many times you can get shot, how many times you can get hurt, like 5 times. You fucking die. You run out of luck. That's the thematic link between these types of games. And that's how these wound systems work. These hearts aren't really representative of like your body's condition, right? Like when your hand am I really going to try to draw a hand right now? Oh my god. When your hand takes damage, when your index finger in Project Zomboid takes damage, or in fucking RimWorld or something, it takes damage. It doesn't go from 85 to 15. That's just a weird amount of simulation, and most players don't intuitively think that way. We'll get to that in a second. Instead, the finger's gone or it's not gone. So we represent that with wounds. These are your chances. And so it kind of invites the question, why would you ever use the wound system? Most games don't use the wound system. Why would you use the wound system instead of having this granular control that allows for potions and pills and bandages and damage over time, and this super flexible system that most games use, ignoring the flow problem? Well, it's a psychology thing. It's a psycho thing. That's not how you sell psycho. I don't know why that doesn't look right to me. Whatever. That's a psychology thing, okay? Um, when players are looking at their HP, their 100 HP, what they're actually looking at is not actually the number. They don't give a fuck about the number. The number could be anything, right? The number could be anything you fucking want. What they're looking at is, am I dead? That's the question. It's a very instinctual, very primal question. Am I dead? Am I dying? Am I about to die? And the way they intuit this, once again, not about the number, it's about how many times this bear can hit them with that fucking bullshit 5,320 power attack. How many times do you get hit with that before it's over, before it's game over? They don't do any number crunching, they don't calculate anything. They just say, how many times can I get hit before it's over for me? They'll wear certain armor pieces in order to boost their defense, right? Sometimes they'll have like spells that give them overshield or overhealth. And what this basically means is that your health is allowed to go beyond its maximum. So it'll go like 100 to 150, or the other way around, rather. You can temporarily bypass your maximum. They'll do all types of different things to ensure that they don't fucking die. And to them, these various numbers are really just they're just flavor. If you've ever seen a player complaining about a skill tree, for example, you know skill trees. Everyone loves skill trees. Ubisoft especially loves fucking skill trees. You have these different nodes that lead to different skills, and almost always they are a percent increase, like 5% cooldown time, or 10% attack damage. And players complain all the fucking time, these things don't mean anything. Well, of course they mean something. And of course, like to you and me, the developers, it means something because we're calculating this shit. And like the difference between a player that has 10% damage and 25% damage is massive. And this is the difference between life and death in most cases. To the player, though, they don't interpret it that way because they're not crunching the numbers. They don't know that difference. They can't give a fuck. They can't be fucked. Instead, what they're counting on is what I just said as the end result. How many hits will it take for me to die? In Minecraft, you can kill a zombie in 2 hits with I'm sorry, no, in 3 hits with a diamond sword, and in 2 hits with a diamond axe. But if you use a netherite axe instead of a diamond axe, you also kill it in 2 hits. As opposed with a diamond sword, where it goes down to 2 hits if you use a netherite sword. 2 crits, I mean. Like, these are all critical hits. He's assuming you know how to do a fucking critical hit. And so the question to the player becomes, okay, why would I ever go to the fucking netherite axe? I meant to put an N here. Why would I ever go to the netherite axe? In the end, I'm still using 2 points of damage. The netherite axe doesn't give me any special effects. It doesn't give me any special like boost in durability. Like, it's just a normal boost in durability. It's like what, 150 or something? It's not that much. And it's very easy to repair the Sagara because you have things like mending. So why would I ever upgrade? What's the point? Hightail, same fucking issue. You have a sword that kills an enemy in 3 hits, and then you have a higher tier sword that also kills the exact same fucking enemy in 3 hits. Why would I ever go through the effort of using the higher tier sword? What does this give me? Why the fuck am I doing this to myself? To the player, it's all essentialized as these numbers. And if they're already essentializing that for their damage, why would they not essentialize that for their health or their mana? In Kingdom Hearts, you have Sora here. He has a spiky hair. And he has his fucking 2 gauges, which are very famous, which start like that's his HP. Like it's a fucking it's a really cool gauge. And then his MP cuts off like this, and it's cut up into segments rather than a number. The HP is a number. There's definitely a number associated with this. With the MP, the way that Sora spends it is he spends it by block. In order to use things like Cure, you use 2 blocks of MP. To use a spell, you use 1 block. And there's like a smaller gauge that's for the fucking mana bubbles or whatever the fuck. I don't really know how that works. But the point is that Sora has a wound system for his mana. And you get these back through combat. And it's like, okay, we've essentialized another system, but this time it's not health points, it's mana points. Let's talk about stamina. When a player is running, right, running for their fucking life from that fucking bear, they are draining their 100 stamina to 0.1, all right, to the very bee's dick of stamina left. And then, only then, only then does the player fucking walk. Only when they get to the very last bit do they fucking walk. And why is that? Well, because as soon as you get to 0 stamina, you might as well be dead, right? Like, you're fucking exhausted, you're winded. As soon as you get to fucking 0, you can't swing a weapon anymore. You'll be swinging it really fucking slow. The designers are punishing you for being at 0. You'll do less damage. You won't be able to, have the mobility of running. This is a tool as well as a basic quality of life. And you're probably going to be taking more damage in turn. Like, you won't have as high defense. You can't lift your fucking shield, maybe. But there's all these issues. Oh, and the most important part is that your fucking stamina bar will be unable to be used. Like it's recharging, right? It's recharging as you rest, but you cannot use it again until it is all the way full. Look at all these punishments for being at zero. The player will always choose to go down to the very bee's dick and then stop to let it recharge, and then they will repeat the cycle. My Grand Blue just finished. Don't ask me why I'm looking at that. So what's the difference then? Why the fuck? What's the fucking point? Isn't this kind of annoying? Isn't it kind of annoying for the player to have to constantly do this song and dance of, oh, am I a zero? No, I'm not a zero. Oh, what if I am? This kind of makes sense for combat because you don't want to incentivize the player to spam attacks, the strongest fucking attacks like power moves or whatever, right? It's a good utility for that. However, you know what's a better fucking utility is just some type of like EX meter, like a special gauge. Why are we using stamina? Why does this make sense? Why are we doing this? Players obviously don't fucking like it, and this is how they interact with the game. They interact by essentializing everything. Am I dead? Am I exhausted? Am I going to die? But once again, all this really comes down to is psychology. We talk about what the player thinks, but we also have to talk about what the player perceives. Here's the issue. If we do the Zelda thing, where everything is a heart, or the Hollow Knight thing, where everything is a mask, and all enemies do 1 to 2 masks of damage, you cannot easily modify this, okay? You can only have a certain amount of hearts on screen before it becomes comical. What do you mean I have 27 hearts? How is this any fucking different than this? And this happens in Minecraft. If you use any Minecraft mod, any type of like mod that increases your HP to stack the hearts, where now you're not getting red hearts anymore, you're getting yellow hearts instead. It's like it becomes meaningless. That this thing of wounds and chances, it's only meaningful in low amounts. It has no meaning beyond low amounts, and that means you are intentionally capping your game. Every fight will become a duel where you can make 3 mistakes and then you're dead. Every fight has to become like that. And like there's a difference between designing that way and fights just so happening to being that way, right? A player perceiving that does not mean that's the reality. In truth, a Dark Souls fight isn't over in 3 hits. Because after you take the first hit, you're probably going to run away like a bitch, right? You're not going to sit there, you're not going to parry because you are a bitch, you're a pussy. And so you're going to be playing with this number, it's going to be regenerating, you're going to use an Estus flask. Your stamina is going to come back. There's lots of different modifiers that are happening as you're running away like a bitch, right? As you're pussying out. I'm sorry. The point is that the player feeling this way isn't actually conducive to how we design that way, because how we design that way is with low amounts. And that would make for a very hardcore experience, right? Whenever a player sees the fucking Hollow Knight amount of HP, the fucking Sifu amount of HP, they think it's hardcore. And they're right. Even if essentially it's the same gameplay in the end, you take 3 hits within a certain period of time, you're dead. Even if that's the case, it doesn't matter. The perception will be that the game is hardcore. And this can be a good thing or a bad thing. However, when you see a game like fuck, what was it called? Disgaea, right? How you spell Disgaea? Is that it? Is that how you spell? And the famous thing Disgaea is known for is the numbers. The numbers easily get into the billions or trillions. Okay, this guy is completely fucking unhinged. They do not give a fuck. They just increase the number nonsensically. And it makes the game come off as fun or cartoony, extreme, right? You think about like Tom getting smashed with a fucking hammer and turning into a disc with feet. Right? That's what fucking happens. He gets turned into a fucking pancake. It's just cartoony for the numbers to be this fucking big. But still, an enemy that is at the stage of the game you're in, like if your number is this big, you're probably at like near the end game, right? If an enemy hits you and you die in 2 hits, what's the difference between this and the fucking wound system? You still die in 2 hits. It's still 2 fucking hits. It's all about perception, and that perception does a lot to how a player works with the game. A Skyrim player will feel a lot more casual than a Hollow Knight player, despite having the same amount of hits that are available to them. A Skyrim player on the highest difficulty will die in 1 to 2 hits. A Hollow Knight, you'll die in 4 or 5 hits. So Hollow Knight is actually more generous. However, it doesn't feel that way. That's all because of the UX. It's about the UX of the number here. This big dumb fucking number, a big dumb gauge that loops in over itself over and over and over again. This fucking Kingdom Hearts thing. Yeah, this one where this bar in Kingdom Hearts 2 gets this fucking long. And it's fucking ridiculous. This is all part of the appeal, and it influences how a player thinks. And so when you're designing your game, don't just assume that you should do the wound system because it's different. You should carefully consider how you want your player to feel, how you want your player to interact with the game. They'll still essentialize. Players will optimize the fun out of the fucking game if given the chance. They always do. However, you as a designer, it is your job to set the path. It is your job to set the tone, set the mood, set up the candles, put petals on the bed. And yeah, I don't know why I went there. I had some other shit here about balance and like exponential curves and HP burn from outward. But I think I kind of made my point. I think you kind of get it. I think this makes sense. But yeah, you don't have to stick to the numbers. Your systems can be a lot more abstract. They can be as abstract as you want them to be. They can be non-existent if you want them to be, and you can use nothing but like signal cues on your HUD in order to make everything make sense. But just because it's different doesn't mean you have to do it. Okay, like, these things are tried and true for a reason. Never forget that.